Ready when you're ready, Mayor.
Okay, let's just go ahead and get started then. Just, what time do you guys all have on your computer? 40.
Just flip to five.
Just flip to-
Yep.
It's 5:45 in Talent, Oregon. We'll call this study session to order for July 1st, 2026. Roll call, please.
Councilor Collet is not present. Councilor Panemarov.
Here.
Councilor Medina is not present. Councilor Greider.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Parra Miller. And Mayor Airsplit. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Hector. Next item on the agenda is review of 1999 annexation approach. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm going to pass this over to Community Development, Rick Zilster.
All righty. Thank you. So before we get into the real context of what's in your packet, just a quick overview so that everybody's on the same page of what we're doing and why we're doing it and the rules around what we're doing. So in that vein, so why are we wanting to annex properties? So an annexation is an expansion of city limits to include adjacent lands. And it brings the properties under city governance, allows the delivery of our services and supports planned growth and development. And typically almost always occurs within the UGB. There are rare examples that we'll get into in the near future where we're hoping to swap the UGB, which would be still with the UGB, a little different. So the bottom line, and annexation is how cities grow in an orderly planned manner while extending municipal services to areas that function as part of the urban community. And like I just mentioned, recent legislations allow for UGB swaps. And again, which we'll be seeing more of here soon. So the Oregon statewide land use planning program. Annexations in Oregon operate within the state's land use planning system administered by the Department of Lands Conservation and Development, or commonly known as DLCD. And annexations must generally be consistent with local comprehensive plans, urban growth boundaries, and statewide planning goals, especially Goal 14 urbanization. And Oregon laws that are governing our annexations are ORS Chapter 222. Those primary outline the annexation authority and procedures. Other laws governing annexation are statewide planning goal 14, which is urbanization, which is framework for orderly urban growth. As mentioned before, urban growth boundaries are very important in these conversations because if it's outside of an urban growth boundary, it's off limits for us and saved for forest, farm, and field. And OAR, Oregon Administrative Rules, 660 Division 14. Those administrative rules are also linking annexations to land use planning. So those are the connection for our planning and annexation. So without that land use planning for orderly growth, we couldn't be doing these things. And of course, local comprehensive plans and development codes provide city-specific annexation criteria. Bottom line to that, all that I just kind of mentioned is annexation is authorized by state law, guided by Oregon land use planning system, and implemented through city policies and procedures. One of the things that we're talking about here, we'll be talking about tonight, which I wanted to kind of highlight, is the idea of island annexations and being contiguous to other parcels that are already within. In 2016, there was Senate Bill 1513, which cities without or with public vote requirements simply follow their own charter and ordinance and rules, which often mirrored the later SB 1573 criteria, but they were not standardized across Oregon. And then Senate Bill 1573 codified and expanded those criteria into state law, making them applicable even to cities that previously did not require parcels to be contiguous to other parcels. So when we look at our city map and we have the UGB, and then we see those little parcels that are within city limits, but no city limits around them. We're going to assume those were prior to 2016 before the laws changed. And island annexations are primarily about creating logical municipal boundaries, providing efficient public services, ensuring that areas functioning as part of the city are governed as part of the city. The key policy questions are service delivery, financial sustainability, and consistency with the city's long-term growth plans. 3 questions are going to be before us for every island annexation. Does it improve governments? Does it give us more logical city boundaries and fewer jurisdictional inconsistencies? Does it improve service of delivery? Is it going to provide us with more efficient infrastructure and emergency response? And does it make financial sense? Does it deliver long-term revenues that exceeds our long-term costs? So in this conversation, we have 2 types of annexations. The first being a city-owned property-owned initiated annexation, where with those ones, where today's conversation is regarding the ODOT properties. And there are properties where the owner either initiates or voluntarily petitions or consents to be brought into city limits. These ones are quite a bit easier and quite a bit fewer issues arise from those. And the property initiated annexations are typically the least controversial because they're voluntary and usually occur when landowner seeks city services, development opportunities, or both, or in our situation, when the city seeks those parcels to be brought in. And then, so that was really quick, dirty, really fast. I apologize. I just want to do it. That was really brief. Any questions before I get into the staff report in front of you all on what I just mentioned? That really.
Any questions? Council Panara.
You're probably about to talk about it. I just had some questions about the ODOT property that we're looking right at about, where it is with, whether it's in the Greenway or not. And you'll probably answer this, but it was also about if there's going to be more maintenance for the city to, like, I don't know, cut weeds or whatever there. That's what I'm listening for. You're next.
Copy. So, in regards to those properties, we're asking ODOT to bring them into the city. We're not asking to be the property owners. So whatever arrangements are already on the Greenway, I see no expectation of those to change. So no, I'm not expecting any new, but go ahead and.
Sorry, I'm just, I would just make sure there's no fine print on that, because there has been situations where the city, I think, maybe took on more than it had expected to by taking over. And that was probably for ownership of, like, right of way and stuff like that. But with ODOT also being, stressed financially, I just want to make sure that we're not taking on more work.
Yes, so that is definitely on our minds as well. It's especially in regards to the highway, which is another piece of the puzzle here. So which I'll happy to get to here in a second. But our first strategy is to bring in the ODOT properties you see highlighted on the staff report, and then that will essentially create islands. And while not all of those parcels are contiguous, only one is required at the time of annexation of multiples. So we are requesting to annex most, if not all, of those 5 parcels to create the islands. Then the next piece of the conversation would be the highway. Echo. In regards to the highway, I'm really confused on this one, because when I look through historical maps, I see the city limits ending out further than what they're showing now. So that is another piece to run down. But regardless, we want to have our city limits boundaries to the north side of the highway, whether that is pinning down with the county what is approved, or if that's just asking ODOT to also include the highway in these annexation processes. And then once step 1 of the parcels is brought in, step 2 is identifying the whether we need to just clarify our boundaries or bring in the highway as well. And then that would create multiple islands along the highway. Then we can move into the highway annexation piece of it. With one of the biggest goals is city requirements for land use and zoning. Right now, some of these parcels, as you drive halfway into the community, best example is some of the signs that we see don't fit the city sign code. But as you're driving in, you're thinking, hey, I'm in the city. But technically, those parcels are following county sign code regulations. So bringing them, all those regulations into consistency within what is perceived and actual city limits is the goal for that. That's the main goal. A side note is we would get a bit more revenue because we would receive their revenue for taxation. I don't see that being a huge amount in consideration of the entire city budget.
So Rick, maybe I could,
I think,
I've got my screen shared, so we could just give folks a little bit more detail of exactly what we're talking about here. So
perfect.
I think this parcel is owned by ODOT and is contiguous to the city. And then,
So the one you're on now is absolutely contiguous to the city. But if we're bringing in multiples, only one is required to be contiguous to the city.
I'm with you. I'm with you. But this and this together would make all of these properties an island.
Correct.
So I know when we've previously talked about island annexation, I think we've been primarily talking about the 4 or 5 that are like close to Arnos or north of Arnos. But if we were to bring these 2 ODOT parcels in, then that would make all of those parcels all the way down to Creel, part of a larger island. So that's so there are a couple ways to go, right? One, we could just bring in the highway down to a little past Arnos to clarify that those first 4 or 5 are islands and bring those in as islands. Or if we could take the larger bite by bringing in the ODOT parcels, which would create a larger island. And to your question, Councilor Penalroff, I hear you, and it's one that I'm not definitively sure on that we should check. I think so. We have a maintenance agreement for the Greenway with the county, and I think we are responsible for everything in our UGB already. But I need to double check that because potentially it's just our city limits, and that might shift our cost share for the Greenway maintenance.
And I'm not aware of any nothing to add to that. One of the things that's I was going to mention before, with the highway, we're not desiring to obtain jurisdiction or for the highway to be ours, but it is common for ODOT to talk about maintenance. So that's one of the things that I'm watching out for as well.
And the language is a little confusing, right? Because we talk about city jurisdiction commonly, but there's also a specific roadway jurisdiction, which is the maintenance responsibility and sort of who gets to set the light timing and those kinds of things. And those are 2 different forms of jurisdiction. Just because a road is within our city limits does not mean it's our roadway jurisdiction. So we'd want to take from ODOT the city limits, but not the jurisdiction responsibility for the highway. The piece that would change potentially is the law enforcement sort of presumption of who handles law enforcement.
Olay?
Yeah, thank you. On the Greenway maintenance piece, Alex, if I understand what you said, I'm understanding what you said correctly. You were saying that the city, to your knowledge, has maintenance responsibilities for anything within its UGB within the Greenway, not just the city limits? But that would surprise me because like the UGB goes out to the other side of the freeway. And I mean, you know this better than I do, but I don't think the city of Talent's maintaining anything past like Lynn Newbury Park, right?
In fact, we don't maintain any of the greenway.
Yeah.
It's all done by county crews. But I don't know what, I think the cost allocation may be by UGB, but
So what we're paying to the county tax to do
Right.
the work?
right.
Oh, okay.
But but that's what I definitely need to check.
Can I ask a not follow up to that, but a different question, Mayor?
Yes, but clarifying question is the UGB crossing, did you say it crossed I-5?
The UGB, I'm looking at the city's map online right now. The UGB follows Valley View Road. It's on the other side of I-5
Yeah, it
for a little
does.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no greenway over in that piece of it, but yes.
My other question was on the kind of the workload level of just bringing in the few parcels that are already islanded on 99 versus doing the two ODOT parcels, creating islands for the rest of 99 and moving those in. It sounds like annexing the ODOT parcels isn't as much work and is not as long a process, but as far as once all those lots were islanded, does that become a lot of work to do all of those? Is that an individual piece by piece process or is that a wholesale process?
So for the ODOT ones, that would be a wholesale process. And then that would open up. Then hopefully everything else that the islands would create would also be a wholesale process. So by doing the first wholesale, that should give us the ability to do the second piece of wholesale as well.
Thank you.
I just clarify, because I just want to make sure I understand. And this is the downside of like going through this process before, but we looked at annexation of these parcels just before the fire. And so and what we looked at previously were the three that are north of well, I can't really see.
Arnos is on the other side of the highway.
Like Arnos.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it's those top three that are in our packet.
I'm not totally sure what you mean by in the packet.
Well, in our study session packet. So looking at the
Are you referring to the three jogs north of the highway, on the north side of the highway? If you look at the city limits line.
the furthest most north three. Yeah, so we're contemplating bringing in ODOT property because we have to do that before we bring in the other two that are south of that. Like we have to do that in order to create an island.
Yes, yes. So the two options would be the three that you're talking about. We could create an island just with right of way, a small right of way, bring in some additional right of way. But if we wanted to bring in the other four others that are further south, yes, that would be the purpose of bringing in the ODOT property is to make those an island as well.
And that's how many south of Arnos? Because I only see two.
Well, you see that, are you looking at,
Oh, wait a minute, I see that sliver along the highway at the very south end.
It's at least 4 lots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I see the little square. And then the puzzle shaped one, and then the long sliver that almost looks like a flag lot.
But she's also looking
Just to-
at the
I'm-
original.
I'm looking at the picture in my packet.
Yeah, I'm counting, it looks like 8.
okay, yeah,
Eight parcels on the other
The
side.
picture in the packet doesn't delineate the lots.
yeah, you
It-
just
it
can't
does,
see
it's
the
hard
lot
to see.
lines. If you look on the meeting screen there, I think those lot lines show up a little bit better there.
Yeah, I just don't have control over it.
Oh, and it's showing different than it's showing on your.
Yeah,
So that, yeah, though that orangish, yeah.
So it's on either side of that one that's sort of an island of the city on the other side of the highway. So on both sides of that, there are a few lots.
and looking at the, what Alex is showing, the easiest way to differentiate what we want to annex is not colored in, so the ones that you can see through to the aerial imagery, those are properties that are not currently city limits. So the brown and yellow and blue you see, those are our zoning designations. There's no zoning designations on those ones because they're not ours to zone yet. That makes sense.
Okay, that does make sense. That's really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I would have, this is gonna go to planning commission, correct? Yeah, so, I think since there's that much process still in front of us, the planning commission, then back to council. I think the little more information that I'd like to see is, just the consequence of bringing in that ODOT property and just knowing fully what that is, because unless there is property owner, interest, and maybe that's the other piece of information we should know. What property owner interest is there on those two pieces of property?
Okay.
I mean, we sort of, the train has left the station in that furthest north one, like, that gets developed, and it's not very meaningful anymore, but. And isn't the middle one is developed as well, isn't it? Isn't that where the winery is? Or is it right next to the winery? Sound and Vision is what I'm thinking of.
Sound and Vision is in the city limits.
Yeah, it's the odd one out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little out.
I'm not entirely sure by property owner's name or business name, so sorry.
It's the one in the orange sea.
Yeah. Counselor Perry Miller?
Rick, I put out the, sentencing in a half of a report about, essential. Where the city plays on that petition and the city would have to pay for special election, I would think we put that.
That's more an Alex round, we're kind of tag team on this, so I'm gonna.
Sure.
ask-
So the city charter allows for any annexation to be referred to the ballot by 100 signatures. So, and then it's under state law that defines who has to pay for that election. And the May and November elections of odd numbered years, we would have no cost by law. And then so if we didn't time it for one of those, and this is all in the eventuality that somebody does petition to put it on the ballot. If it fell to a different schedule, like a May or November election in an even numbered year, there are always special elections, not always, almost always special elections going on. And then we'd have to share the cost of that special election with whoever else, which other jurisdictions are putting special elections on the ballot. So it's really hard for the county clerk to give us an exact number on what that cost to the city would be. I think the way to assure ourselves that we're not getting into any costs would be to time it so that it is appearing on a odd year ballot. I had a fantasy at one point that we do it, that we were trying to set it up for this November, but that just didn't happen. So I think the chances of the ODOT annexation being referred to the ballot are extremely slim. But I think when we take if we're taking the larger group, I think there's certainly a potential, and I think we'd want to be careful to time it so would fall on a free election.
Councilor Collet? Rick, were you wanting to say something before I move to council?
I do, but go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm talking about a different topic, so if you
Yeah.
want to answer something to that,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect. So I did hear two questions, one from the mayor, one from Council Collet, that kind of tie into each other, and I just wanted to mention that wholesale and the work involved for staff. If we just did this 3 on the north that we had identified earlier, and not the ones highway side south, the amount of work for staff to bring those ones on as well, it's not a huge difference. We're still noticing, we're still meeting, we're still doing all the staff reports, whether we're doing 3 parcels or 10 parcels. So and the idea of wholesale, it makes more sense for us to kind of include more parcels. That's.
Yeah, I agree. And I understand what you're saying. I just want to be clear that what I was saying was more relative to what Councilor Pernell, I was really just repeating what she said, like I'm concerned about, I would like to know the consequences of bringing on the ODOT property, both positive and negative.
Copy.
And I just, for the record, I think I'd like to see the planning commission get a study session on this as well. We may have missed an opportunity to do a joint session, and that's not a complaint. It's just, that's how we can do these moving forward. But I think if it would be worth considering them getting a study session maybe before a planning commission meeting as well. Because I know that we've all been exposed to bringing in those other 3 pieces, but none of us have talked about bringing in the ODOT property, and so it would be completely blended. And before I take your question, Councilor Coley, I just want to clarify too that the ODOT strip is the ODOT strip for the purpose of transportation for the greenway. Is that why ODOT has that strip?
I suspect that they owned it when they developed I-5 prior to the Greenway being.
Interesting. For what purpose?
Gobbling up land to build the freeway.
Yeah, I mean, that's only my suspicion.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what figuratively the purpose of why they own that land might be informative. So if we could find that out as well. Councilor Coley?
Just on that, I hypothesis is that a lot of the ponds along I-5, a lot of the ponds, like in between Bear Creek and I-5 are borrow pits for building the freeway, like digging up gravel. And so ODOT owned a lot of those to dig gravel, build the freeway, and it's just surplus land that is now green space because the Greenway came, I don't know when the Greenway was built, but I-5 is before that.
Yeah, it was. Way before that. I just read about it and I can't remember the date.
What
makes me suspicious is the fact that it just
Yeah.
Goes right over the Greenway,
Mhm.
follows it all the way through. So yeah, your question?
Yeah, it just says in the packet, and it's fine if you don't have the answer right now. Maybe this is for the planning commission or the future, but in the long run, the second annexation will marginally increase property tax revenue. Is there a rough dollar figure on that? Is it $10,000, $20,000?
I hadn't even looked at it. I mean, maybe it's $1 million in taxable assessed value altogether. I mean, in round figures, and then so our millage would be 3% of that. So that's 3,000, not 30,000.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's always so illuminating to hear that, because everybody thinks, that is our big cash cow, Councilor Coley?
Part of the reason why I asked that is we have heard from people of, why don't we expand the urban, annex some stuff in to increase property tax revenue. So this activity would do that, but to the tune of $3,000.
Yeah. Councilor Perry Miller?
So I'm remembering pretty recently, maybe within like the last year or so, we had a developer come before us and speak on behalf of a property owner trying to get a property that was in this strip brought into the city limits for like a bunch of different reasons. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand this process. So you are just letting us know that it might be a little bit more of a controversial process bringing in the private property little teeth along that strip, whereas ODOT would probably be happy to help us with this process. But I guess I'm just wondering, and I guess we just wouldn't know this until we got there, like how likely is it that the property owners that aren't already incorporated would be not happy about that, considering that they might be getting kind of a sweet deal?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, by and large, absent a desire to develop, property owners prefer to not be annexed because it does mean a slight increase in property taxes, and they basically get city services because they're right there, right? Our police, if there's an urgent call, don't worry about whether it's in the city or not. So, fundamentally, to me, it's about fairness and good over urban form, right? When you're walking down the street there, you think you're in the city, and you're in the city and out of the city and in the city and out of the city. And if we had a magic wand, or we're drawing city limits without any consideration, you sure as heck wouldn't draw it like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect that anybody's particularly enthusiastic about being annexed, but there are forms of development that wouldn't require, typically what drives annexation, right, is somebody wants urban services. But there are forms of development that can take place out there that that wouldn't require annexation, that we wouldn't permit. And so it's for our ability to control the land use out there that we'd want to have to annex these properties. So the whole thing is about a regulatory authority in my mind.
And to kind of a little bit more to your point, I don't recall exactly which property, but within the last couple of months, we have had properties reach out to the department and be like, hey, we would like water. And then the conversation moves to, well, let's talk about annexation, and it just stops right there. So I have seen, and we do have residents on that highway that are like, your water is not worth annexation. So that's another one of the services that is included in this as well. So
Councilor Coley?
On the water thing too, I was gonna ask, because there are people on city water that live, like I was talking to someone who lives out Foss, and they're just outside of the city limits and used to have a well, and it was more cost effective to just plug into the city. So they're still outside of it, but they're getting water, but they're paying for that directly through their water bill. And then the conversation was actually around fees. I was curious if those people also paid public safety fee. Sounds like they do. So in your mind though, or in practice, or maybe it's in policy, is that the practice then if someone outside of the city requests city water, the first step would be to request that they annex?
have an annex conversation, and I've even seen some that are within the UGB that I'm not gonna say that this is our policy because I don't know that 100%, but I have exercised other policies in other cities where in order to provide water, we would require a irrevocable consent to annex at a minimum, if not annexation.
So those people,
And-
just to follow up, the people that have city water that are outside of the city limits just got a different exception, or that was back in the day, different staff policy. So, okay.
There's like a grandfathered agreement. Those folks out of the county,
Okay.
and they pay like a slightly higher rate or something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Medford Water Commission tightened up their policies around extraterritorial. I think about 20 years ago, I think, if I'm recollecting. So yes, there were times in the past where legally the city could do that. We can't even legally do that now if we wanted to. This discussion does remind me, though, of another advantage to the city of annexing these properties as a group. Any individual one of these properties that did want to get full urban services and they're not annexed, they would have to pay for the individual annexation. It becomes, that's an additional barrier to them actually fully, developing their property at an urban level. And that we'd be actually removing by this process.
Personally, I'm excited to see this come back before us. This is business that got unfinished because of the fire, if my memory serves me right. I just am, I'm just a little concerned that we are forced to bring in that ODOT property in order to make those other two pieces work. And from my view, I just definitely want to see if this is a good return on our investment in order to do that. But yeah, this is work that's been deferred for too long, and it'd be good to get it wrapped up. I'm sure the planning commission will be grateful about it as well. Is there anything else on this? Counselor Collet?
Yeah, I just say that I concur. I'm excited to see it move forward too. I think it's proper urban planning to have a appropriately shaped polygon around your city, and having the weird little thing that everyone thinks you're in the city. If you call the police show up. So it makes total sense, and it'll prevent issues going forward. So I'm excited to see it be dealt with.
It's been called the missing teeth for too long, and
Yeah,
maybe
that's what I was trying to.
we can get a full smile now. Okay, is there anything else before we move on to the next item?
No, I think that's great.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Great report. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate the work. So the next item on the agenda is to discuss the economic development strategy. Staff?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So this has been a topic that I think council's been excited to talk about, and staff's been looking forward to having some time to talk about as well. So the city currently doesn't have what one would call an economic development plan. We have some really good recent work that are pieces of a plan, but they're not necessarily haven't been brought together. And the city certainly hasn't prioritized which pieces of those that we want to tackle. My preference and suggestion to you all is that the logical next step to me is that just the work plan. If we wanted to tackle these other deeper steps, those could be included in a work plan as something that we want to do in the future. But my hope for this evening is to get your feedback on that, to make sure that I'm on the right track to reconstitute the Economic Development Commission, to sort of give you all input on that, whatever that next product is, and make sure that you hear me ask you for ideas, whether they come to you now or you want to share them with me later. And then if we have time, I think it might be interesting to walk through the specific policy areas, and I could share with you some initial thoughts, and again solicit some initial thoughts from you all as well. So with that, I'll stop and welcome questions or comments about whether a work plan is the right place to start.
I have an opinion about that. I mean, as far as I know, like going back 25 years serving this community, I don't think we've ever had an economic development plan. We did work pretty hard on the economic element for the comprehensive plan, and I mean, going back as far as I can remember, I don't think there was ever anything else more than that, just because of capacity of small city, if no other reason. But I think our economic element in the comp plan is great, and I think it could really serve to inform a work plan, and then maybe get expanded later if the city decides to take up something more substantial in terms of an economic plan. So I think this approach is perfect. It sort of allows us to kind of pick at the low hanging fruit and start checking boxes that we have the capacity to start checking, and then grow from there. In other words, rather than make another plan and have that be everything that we are doing for economic development, we'd be actually doing some work while the planning process is in process. And I really appreciate that idea a lot. Anybody else have any comments? Well, then if there's no more of the comments, then why don't we take the next 15 minutes or so for you to go through the policy as.
Great, thank you, Mayor. So these are sort of candidates in my mind that we might want to consider focusing work on over the next year or two. And as you mentioned, I certainly, staff is certainly not going to stop doing stuff because we're planning. Than just this process itself, right? Like it reminded me, gosh, is the microtrains building on the market yet? So I contacted Jacqueline Wallet and we're trying to figure out who the property contact is. So Reddy's got that property on their list as a potential
have that
industrial.
contact, and I've actually visited the property. So I'd be happy to pass that on to you. And as far as I know, they are putting it on the market right now. So.
Great, thank you.
And then I do want to just correct my statement. I didn't mean stop. I mean, not initiate things that we're not doing.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. So one question that the mayor certainly raised, that would be a logical question that cities always ask themselves when they're thinking about economic development. And that's where do you find the resources to do real stuff? And urban renewal is the most logical way to do that. So, I'm sure at some point in the future, the city will look at that question again, but it may be now. So I think that's probably the hardest one to answer on this list. Like, is that in or out as far as something we want to start looking at? But rather than.
Do you want comments on that?
Yep. Councilor Panama.
Yeah, I think the time is right to revisit urban renewal. I think that a lot of the pushback that came before was because the taxes had dipped due to the fire and people were just freaked out about potential losses in revenue. I think the jurisdictions, particularly Fire District 5, full disclosure, I serve on Fire District 5 Board of Directors. The leadership has indicated that generally speaking, urban renewal can benefit fire districts if they work in conjunction with the municipalities, and it can be a win-win. So given the change of leadership and also the fact that the tax situation is it's night and day from what it was before, I think the timing is good to revisit that. And I really don't expect it to be controversial the way it was right after the fire.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? When you say leadership, are you talking about both the board and the chief, or can you clarify that?
No, I'm only talking about the chief, actually.
Okay.
Because that was where the chief was the one that expressed those opinions.
Great.
I don't think there was any discussion among the board.
Councilor Coley?
Yeah, I think, this has been stated at other meetings, and in the public as well, but after the fire, a lot of Phoenix's development is because they're still, I don't know if they're still drawing on urban renewal. I know their project.
$13 million left.
Yep. So they are utilizing urban renewal to do exactly what it's for. So I think it's worth looking at again.
And actually, just for they at one point in time, they were sundowning and decided not to. So they very wisely have been, and very successfully have been revitalizing their community with urban renewal after post fire. Any other comments? Yes.
So
Yeah. Oh, Councilor Perry Miller.
Thanks. Yeah, I just echo what the mayor and Councilor Panamaroff and Councilor Coley. I echo their sentiment, and I think that hopefully, I think our community and the jurisdictions that overlap us are probably just a lot more educated about what urban renewal is now than they were last time. I think like the trauma that our community experienced from the fire had a big impact on that, the way that vote went. So I think that another education campaign would probably be something we'd have to think about. And yeah, I'm definitely supportive.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think 13 million is their total increment. I think what they approved was another $3.5 million. I just want to just clarify that. Daniel, Councilor Colway.
Thank you. I think too, in that discussion, and we'll dig into the other pieces that you have on here, Alex, but I think if that urban rural discussion is tied to very specific projects and specific elements, I know that it was before, but that was some of the criticism before, was that it was, too big and broad. I think that will help with the public's buy-in, if we can really tie it to tangible things that they're going to see change because of that funding, and things that wouldn't or couldn't get funded otherwise. So, because we've been doing what we did after urban renewal, which is obtain a specific grant for a specific project and move forward at a slower pace. But if there are things that people want to see done, and if this commission recommends things, and that's the tool that makes sense to fund it, it would make sense to look at using that tool.
Great. Staff?
Great. That's super helpful. So business recruitment is often what people have in mind when they talk about economic development. I think in our case, and I would say this for pretty much any jurisdiction of our size, the key role for us is making sure that we understand the individual properties and the opportunities that are related there, and we're sharing that information with our partners who do business recruitment. That's not really, it's not worth our time, frankly, because it's such a big world, and the labor markets are generally regional. If a business is thinking about moving to the Rogue Valley, they're thinking about moving to the Rogue Valley. They're not thinking about moving to Talent or Medford or Central Point. So I think there's important stuff to do here, but it relates to specifically the Walmart building. What are their constraints there? What would be the constraints for the Microtrains building? In terms of land use, there are some sort of medium to longer term things here that do need to be done at some point. Rick, I don't remember if the term is commercial or industrial or non-residential for a buildable lands update. It would be relevant to the economic development, but economic element, but as part of an update to update the economic element, we have to both look at our industrial land capacity.
Are you referring to economic opportunities analysis?
Well, it's a piece of that, right? So you do an economic opportunity analysis, and part of that is you're looking at what your buildable lands are that would meet those economic opportunities, and that's typically needed to justify either bringing in land to the city or into the urban growth boundary for commercial or industrial purposes.
So are you recommending another EOA? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not, frankly.
Okay.
The question, I think it's something worth considering. My gut right now would be this isn't the moment, unless, well, and the primary reason I say that is I haven't heard a lot of appetite from this council to bring in TA4 as industrial. That would be the primary sort of not mechanical, but just that would be the payoff. That would be the obvious payoff of going through that whole process. And that's a lot of work. And if there's not a lot of enthusiasm or appetite for that, that would be a lot of work for not that much.
Can I ask a clarifying question before I start taking questions? So if we brought it in as industrial, doesn't the state law allow affordable housing or on light industrial lands? And in fact, only affordable housing?
Yes, so, so by that statement, I meant that I've heard interest from this council to explore that possibility. And we would not have, I don't believe, have to go through the buildable land, inventory and economic opportunity analysis in order, if we were bringing it in expressly for that purpose of allowing affordable housing.
So would we have to change it to housing, housing designation in order to do that? To me, that seems like when we're talking about RPS, a higher hill to climb. And like, if we're talking about EOA brings in it as an industrial piece and it can be housing, that compared to, in order to bring it in for housing specifically, we have to change the designation to housing, and in the RPS process that I understand, that's actually a higher hill to climb.
There's a lot of complexity there that I'm not sure exactly what the answers are, but I think I am still confident in the statement like that. If there's something there to that would be the reason to go through the whole economic opportunity analysis. That's the piece of land that we might want to bring in as employment, whether, and the caveat being, I think that there may well be a route to do it if it is for housing without going through all that work.
That'd be, I hope we could take advantage of having Josh in our midst soon to ask that question, like what is the path of least resistance for housing there? Okay, Council Coley and then Council Penamara.
Yeah, and it sounds like maybe this is a question to queue up for Josh too, but around TA4, because there's been discussion about it being brought in for affordable housing, does the entire unit need to be brought in for affordable housing? Or if a developer wanted to develop half of it for affordable housing, could the whole unit be brought in and then the remainder could be left for light industrial as it's in the plan?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suspect you'd need the buildable land and inventory and the EOA to justify it if that's where you are ending up.
Council Penamara.
Yeah, as far as, the council not having, an appetite for bringing this in as light industrial. I just want to say that, in my 8 years, I've been pretty laser focused on our responsibility to create more housing and because that's where the lack has been. I haven't ever heard a proposal that it would benefit the city in some way to bring it in as industrial, but I haven't been educated on that. So if staff felt that there was a benefit to the city that was worthwhile, that the council would have an appetite for, I would certainly be willing to, just like read something about that and see what that was. But I just wanted to confess pure ignorance on what benefit that might have.
I just want to add another comment. I think it'd be an interesting analysis, although I suspect I know the answer, that if it was brought in as light industrial, which again, my understanding of the RPS process is because that's the current designation, we would not have to amend the plan, bring it in as light industrial. Its value as housing land is higher than its value as industrial land. So I suspect the market would take care of that. That would be an interesting question to analyze a little bit. And I just can't imagine with the light industrial land that we do have in the city that's available to build and has sat empty the entire time I've been in service to this community up until today, that bringing in more light industrial land is going to be gobbled up with manufacturing, where if it's allowed affordable housing and affordable housing is the only allowed housing, it's an interesting proposition to the city. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Alex.
It's the area opposite Gateway on 99. Certainly, if we were moving forward with urban renewal, I think would be a logical place to focus urban renewal. That probably isn't worth doing a lot of master planning of absent that tool. It's because it's so parcelized, without having somebody who's ready to sort of pull it together to make it more developed. Anyway, that is an opportunity, but it probably fits best with urban renewal. You all also, when we discussed last time we talked about the Little League fields, wanted some work on what is the possibilities or likely use of those ball fields. That's time flies, but they still have, I think, 3.5 years on that lease out there. So that's not necessarily an urgent item, but something that we need to continue to keep on our radar. So we are ready if and when you're next discussing that.
And I honestly, I don't think there's been any change by any counselor that we're interested in looking at without them having a place to go to. And it looks like the school district is out several years as well. So I just want to put connect those dots.
Mhm. I'll move to the questions about downtown. I think my categories here are very loose because several of these downtown questions are land use questions as well. But there's steps that we've already that you all have discussed a little bit already in terms of using existing urban renewal funds to make sure that assuming that the gateway development happens, well, the gateway development will happen. It's just a matter of when. And so making sure that that's very well tied to downtown from just a pedestrian standpoint. There's Historic Town Hall. I think there are also some questions in my mind, and I think in Rick's as well, whether it would be better, downtown could potentially be more attractive for additional investments if it was easier to do some housing development that's not mixed use, whether that's on side streets or some portion of downtown. Ultimately, commercial development is driven by the population of customers. Anyway, that's a question that I'm going to continue to pose. I think in the area of arts-led development, I mean, that seems to me the easiest question. It's something that's to my mind very clearly of interest to council. It's based on something that's very real and an existing asset, and I think it can be leveraged with without tremendous amounts of resources. So I think that's in my mind the obvious thing to include here. I think it always makes sense to look at regulatory processes. I'm sure Rick would love to have the time and resources to strip down his whole process and rebuild it in a way that was most logical. That is a time and resource intensive process, not necessarily resource intensive, but it's one or the other.
I just have a quick question, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Collet?
Oh, I just don't see it on here, but I feel like it fits into number 6 under regulatory or process improvement. I know the planning commission has been discussing the historic overlay.
Mhm.
That could be another barrier that fits in there.
Thank you. Absolutely. That does belong there. The visitation and marketing branding obviously overlaps a lot with the questions about arts-led development, but certainly not exclusively. The destination development strategic plan that you all reviewed favorably, talked about a lot of other opportunities in that area. We think made a tiny bit of progress this week on getting in touch with Airbnb, but related to that would be, I still owe a conversation with you all about how TLT, the transient lodging tax revenues will be distributed. I never want to talk about economic development without mentioning business retention and expansion. I mean, that's sort of the other end of the spectrum from business recruitment, right? And I think there was a lot of anyway, I I'm not sure what that best looks like. I know the Economic Development Commission in the past did a lot of survey work. I can see value in that at times, although not necessarily surveying the general public, but actually going and having individual discussions with businesses. I think there's anyway, that's an important part. And there's also the Makerspace and Business Incubator. And in my mind, I mean, that's clearly an adopted goal of the city. And then I think the question becomes really about, do we have through urban renewal or another place the resources to really put behind it, or is it simply a matter of the city being in support of it? And then just a few things that were in the element that in the economic element that I wanted to have an opportunity to raise that I didn't see as necessarily weren't the most powerful arguments to me, and I don't think necessarily belong in this work. Well, there's a mix here. So as I mentioned, surveying local citizens about what they want is often something that happens. It's generally not terribly productive. I'll just be frank with you. Like it raises expectations about things that people making business investments don't make them based on a survey of a couple hundred people that say, I'd like that.
I think we've done it twice in years that I've served the city, and that really has played out both times.
The Element E strategy around higher paying jobs, I admired the sentiment and the wish behind it. But I don't think there are particularly good tools that the city has to drive that. And ultimately, again, it's a regional jobs market. So I don't think that makes sense as a place to focus. And then livability, I entirely endorse the idea that that's an essential part of your economic development. How you frame and set the groundwork for economic development, but I don't think belongs as part of this planning process, because we have lots of other places where we talk about the importance of livability in parks. But thank you for indulging me going through that. This was a fun staff report to write.
Councilor Penamarath.
I just want to say thanks, and I so appreciate your experience, wisdom, and enthusiasm about the subject. I just have a tiny little nit about the ordinance that the quorum requirement of 4 voting members, which would be kind of difficult, which is fine if all 7 vacancies are filled. But if it goes down, the typical thing is a majority of the members of the committee. So because we've had quorum problems before and weren't able to work, maybe this could be looked at to be consistent with our other committees and commissions, which may not be consistent among themselves. But the quorum thing jumped out at me because that can be a practical difficulty if the committee gets small.
Great, thank you for that.
So are you suggesting maybe an amendment to section 3?
Yeah, well, since this is our current ordinance, I think they would have to go through the whole rigmarole of it. I'm looking at section 8 for under quorum on the ordinance. It says 4 of the voting members of the commission shall constitute a quorum. And
Based on section 3. So if one changed, the other would logically change.
that too, I wasn't thinking about that. That's very true. But I was only thinking about if the number, it could be a 7 member, 7 members, but with vacancies,
Oh, yeah.
allowing for vacancies. Yeah, so there's an.
Majority.
Right, the majority
Maybe
of
language.
seats. Yeah, and I'm not quite sure however we do it for council, because so we're able to continue to function even if we're not fully staffed or filled.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Council Penamara, if that's right. I think you said it out the gate. I just wasn't connecting the dots.
It was also,
It's a related thing that has bitten us before.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
All right, is there anything else?
Now from staff.
Great staff report. Council Greider?
yeah, I just wanted to get, I know we're short on time, but this is my first report from and I just really appreciate it. It was really clear. I liked the number of points and I especially appreciated number 9 because the recommendation to do for a long time. It's helpful to hear from you and just really shows that you took the time to kind of pull some of those things out that aren't.
Council Collet?
Yeah, I don't think you addressed this. Yeah, thanks again for the enthusiasm. I'm excited about working on this. Staff have capacity for this? Will it be mostly you working on this, Alex, or will some of the department heads? I would assume community development would be involved, but you know, would the commission be staffed? Just those kind of things. What's the staff capacity?
Yeah, I think it will be a challenge, you know, and absolutely, I plan on leaning on Rick to participate, although not necessarily have to drive things. So yeah, my plan is to be the primary staff to this, and I think I can't find the time to it, although maybe not starting up immediately.
I wonder if we can close this meeting asking staff to bring the ordinance back to us for potential amendment.
Absolutely.
Great. All right, is there anything else? This meeting's adjourned. We will open the city council meeting at 6:55.
All right, thank you.